All right, hey Coach, thanks for joining me today on this simple coach to coach interview. As always, excited to speak with you. You're one of the good guys. I know Coach Desatel and Coach Axel are already battling out, but you are indeed, I will rank one of my favorites. You were the first one to actually do an interview with me, so that always goes down. You could put that on your resume, but thanks for joining me today.
Mhm. Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. So, I mean, this is going to be like the easiest softball question, I would think. Since I always start out following the season, if somebody were to ask you, how did your season go? How did your season go?
Yeah. The answer I always give is bittersweet. I mean, obviously, a lot more positives. For any team out there, you probably can't take losing one game. When you have so many other games that are part of the season as well to beat yourself up on. But yeah, just like probably for most teams, roller coaster. Some good games, some bad games. When thinking about how the season went, probably most proud that we played our best soccer at the end of the season. A lot of ties during the regular season, which were probably justified for both teams in the contest. But yeah, I felt like we probably started to come alive. Um, Ironically enough, after the PK shootout win versus Amherst in the NESCAC
Mm-hmm.
tournament, I feel like that kind of galvanized the group and made us realize that we could do something this season. And both offensively and defensively, it's not like one surmounted the other in terms of our identity. I felt like in the postseason, um, we started to be a team that could limit teams, and then scoring 4 goals against Suffolk, scoring 3 goals against Franklin Marshall. Like the at that point, the offense was clicking as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Can I ask you, after you won the national championship, the following year was a little bit rocky. And
yep,
then here you have a bounce back. Can I just ask
yeah.
you
Like
what?
we'll probably suck next season.
I mean, that could be. You might be on that proverbial roller coaster ride, but can I just ask you what was the difference? Like, was there something you did differently, or that you managed it differently, or I mean, was it just a
Back in
confluence of events? Like, you win the national championship, you're super high, and you're super high expectations, and then the next year you just sort of drain. I don't want to say drained, but like all of that emotional release is now gone, and does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the two things that I always think about in 2022, um, talking about that specifically, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think everyone says it, but like I think it's absolutely true. The NESCAC is a crapshoot. Like
Mm-hmm.
like there was no entitlement that we were just going to do well in 2022. Like any NESCAC team can beat another team, and again, like this year we finished sixth in the NESCAC, but got to a national championship. So it's not like we absolutely blew anyone away or dominated this year. Like 2022, I think we lost 4 games by 1 goal.
Yeah.
So maybe things would have gone slightly different if a couple plays were different. And this year, same thing. Like it's a dead even conference, and for any NESCAC team, regardless of how you do the previous year, like um, there's no guaranteed success the following year. The second thing I'd say is just 2022 we struggled tactically with the counterattack. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of alluding to the games that we lost narrowly. I think what happened in 2022, and I could be wrong, like this is me remembering my analysis is that other teams sat off us a little bit. We had a lot of the ball, and then we were maybe at times in games too expansive, too open when the ball was lost. And yeah, I remember like I think it was the first NESCAC game of the season for 2022. We lost to Bowdoin 1-0, and they hit us on the counterattack, and then the third element is probably what you alluded to of the pressure of being the defending national champion, and when you go down and there's 10 minutes left, it's
Yeah.
natural. You're working with collegiate athletes, 17, 18, 19 years old, that
Yeah.
they feel that ownership to have to win games because they were so successful the last year. So combination of everything, I think. Um, um, you'll be really surprised. Even at the Division 3 level, teams are now very good on the counterattack. Teams can score in a variety of different ways, and yeah, I think that specifically hurt us that season. But you never get too down, you never got too low. We bounced back in 2023, getting to the Elite Eight because we analyzed the season. The guys took the culture of the offseason very seriously, and I
Hmm.
think 2023 we we kind of had that pressure lifted off our shoulders and played with a
Yeah.
chip on our shoulder instead of trying to get back to where we were before. So,
All right, so I got to ask you the million-dollar question: How you made it to the finals? How do you how do you prevent that from happening next year?
um, you mean how to continue replicating success?
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
I think I think there's so many factors. I think first off, internal leadership. I feel like the best teams are always player led, and this offseason really starting to groom some of the younger guys to be leaders this upcoming season. The right mentality, embodying the right work ethic, being selfless, not just thinking about how good of a season they can have next year, but how good of a season we can have next year, and not letting there be outliers or guys in the team not pulling their weight. And so yeah, like if you want to be a competitive team each year, one of the fundamental requirements is having really strong leaders, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, the 12 seniors that we had this
Mm-hmm.
season. Anyone can lead, and it's about kind of concentrating the minds of the guys that are still here of what are they willing to sacrifice and commit to collectively as a group to get to where we want to be, and that honestly starts the day after the season ends.
Mm-hmm.
So leadership, um, again, the mindset of improving. I always talk about there's two mindsets. Great players think that they're average or good and are willing to do anything it takes to be great. And good players already think they're great and take their foot off the gas and feel
Mm-hmm.
entitled to success because they already think that they're great.
Mm-hmm.
So we by no means, you know, before a ball has kicked in the season, by no means we think that we're a great team. We go into the season thinking that we're at baseline, and we always need to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's holistically, technically, tactically, physically, mentally. So there's a ton of room for growth, and it's all about getting 1% better every day in the off season, throughout the season. And I think if every guy on the team, if all 34 guys can embody that mentality of, we're not great yet, but we can get there through our own ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think leadership, work ethic, mentality, and a big piece of it is on me bringing in the right guys, bringing in the guys that will fit here. It's my belief that if you want to be a highly competitive team, you need freshmen that can contribute in some capacity,
Yeah.
whether it's a
Totally
lot,
agree. I think that's
whether
very underrated
I mean,
talking point.
it'd
Yeah.
be easy to look at Dylan Hoke, center back on our team
Hmm.
as a freshman who started every single game, and it's like, oh, those are the guys that you need to bring in, guys that are
Yeah.
going to be high impact, gray area D1 guys, but like the other five freshmen that we had this year were completely bought in, made training better. Even if they only played 5 or 10 minutes,
Hmm.
like they impacted or affected the game in those 5 minutes. So a big piece is on me bringing in the right guys and bringing in the guys that can
Hmm.
compete head to toe with some of the upperclassmen that are here. Because if you're not, then the upperclassmen, you run the risk of them taking their foot off the gas and them
Hmm.
feeling reassured that the position is theirs for the next couple of years. And you famous Sir Alex Ferguson quote: "The best time to rebuild is when you're already strong or when you're already on top."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a big piece as well. But yeah, I'd say leadership, internal leadership. Not being a joystick coach, but giving the guys on the team um, the ownership to take the direction of where they want the team to go and holding each other accountable. I'd say the recruiting and the collective mindset of the team. You don't want it to be a team where
Hmm.
half the guys are embodying the work ethic that takes to get to a Final Four, and the other half are kind of being dragged along.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
Nick
Yeah.
the Nick Saban quote. Underachievers or slackers. Slackers don't like high achievers, and high
Yeah.
achievers don't like slackers. So you gotta get everyone on the same page in the
Yeah.
offseason.
Yeah. All right. So you just rattled my brain a little bit. Let me ask you the I don't know, the harder question if that's it. All right. So you mentioned like it's on you to recruit the right guys, right? Because I always say like it takes years to build up a locker room, and it takes one bad recruit to destroy it, right? And can I ask you? And you might this it might be luck, could be like how do you make sure that you are recruiting the right guys to come into your program? Forget the soccer side, but that they're
Yeah,
not disruptive, to what you're trying to accomplish.
every coach would probably admit that it's an imperfect science, and for every kid that like is an absolute home run, like um, maybe not for every kid, but like you have to have the humbleness that you're gonna get, you know, you're gonna miss a piece of the puzzle in the recruiting process. Um, but yeah, I would say, recruiting, yes, everyone wants to bring in talents, but the biggest factor to recruiting is relationships. Relationship with the coach, how do they communicate with you? Relationship, you know, with the players. Like I would never sign a player if they never came here and didn't spend time with our guys.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is naive, but I use my guys as input in terms of um, asking them, do they think that recruit could be a fit? Did they enjoy spending time with them? Um, um, yeah, I mean, probably at our level, you don't have the luxury of specific. I think there's different levels to recruiting. There's schools out there that get to select, and then there's some schools that out there get to recruit, and there's some schools out there that um, really, really have to sell. Um, and I think I really try to focus on the relationship aspect, because if you want consistency over the long term, that's going to come down to character. I mean, there's so many teams out there at Division 3 that probably have enough talent, to compete for a national championship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the difference over the long haul um, is every single kid that you're bringing in um, going to embody um, the character, the mentality, um, the academic integrity to fit what you already have going here. So, real, again, it's an imperfect science. I try to build a relationship with the recruit. I try to encourage recruits to come to campus so they can start to gain an understanding and build a relationship with our players. I'd say, the kind of other pieces, I'd rather recruit a kid that, like, I'm going to sense is going to bleed blue, that really wants to be part of what we have here, believes in the vision, um, is going to be committed to how we run the program and everything, versus a kid that is maybe a D1 transfer and kind of comes in with the mentality that they're doing Kana service instead.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky. There's so many kids out there, but I think through investing time in getting to know the recruit and building that relationship, you can really start to figure out, all right, like, does this kid seem like a kid that we already have here, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. I'm always intrigued by that. Like it's funny. I was like talking to Coach Axtell about it from Cortland. I don't know if it's my age or whatever. I find more interesting like the dynamics between a player and a coach, and especially in programs and how important it is to get the right guys. I find that infinitely more interesting than, hey, how do you play? What's your, like what are your X's and O's look like? It just, I think that, I look at and all the coaches I talk to and all the, who are the great teams and who are the not so great teams, and you always come down to there's something about the locker room that you can't necessarily quantify, but you can definitely see there's a difference, and I think that's huge, personally. But joystick coach, I love that. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Um, I I
Yeah.
have I I have a I have a theory that the the best coaches are the ones that kind of know their limits once the whistle blows. Like there's only so much you really can do, and you have, I always say, 10 minutes in halftime to really make the adjustments that matter, but during the game it's really hard. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about not wanting to be a joystick coach.
Yeah, the two coaches that talk a lot about this are Nagelsmann from Germany and Thomas Tuchel from Germany as well. And they allude to the fact that you just said, where the vast majority of learning, understanding happens Monday through Friday in training. Like, as far as I can tell, there's never been a coach that's been allowed to kick the ball or do a sprint or make a header. So, like, soccer, for me, soccer is about uh, your team's collective understanding of how to defensively manage and deny space, and then offensively, how can you create and exploit space. So it's all about constant decision making, whether you have the ball or you're off the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's game day and there's a lot of pressure, um, the outcome is important, and um, players have to make a lot of decisions. You have to rely on the fact that you've helped them learn um, how to make these decisions Monday through Friday. Um, there's absolutely nothing wrong. You see coaches like Unai Emery and other coaches that are right up on the touch line,
Mm-hmm.
instructing their players, really passionate. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because their intention is to help and to guide. Um, for me, I would feel like a bad coach if I'm trying to manage every single split decision of a player on game day. The
Mm-hmm.
sign of a good coach is that you've helped them with their understanding of what the expectations of how the team wants to play Monday through Friday, so that on Saturday they have the confidence and freedom um, to be able to go out and demonstrate what they've learned um, over over weeks and weeks. And it for me it was a great sign that our team played our best in possession and out of possession at the end of the season, because
It shows. It
it
shows.
shows that they
Yeah.
they continue to learn
Yeah.
as the season went on.
Yeah.
Versus it's harder to get results at the end of the season if they're still reliant on you.
Yeah.
Again, it's probably a bad terminology, but joysticking them under pressure.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the season. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer, but
Yeah. I
yeah,
just find that interesting.
you have to be there and help guide them and show that you care as a coach on the sideline and being invested with your attitude and passion, but at the same time, like players are never going to be able to fully be independent um, unless you've helped the learning process
Hmm.
over weeks and weeks and weeks.
I find that this topic's really interesting, especially as the game has gotten more structured at
Yeah.
all levels.
So,
I think
yeah.
at all really structured. I think a lot of coaches forget to have confidence in their players to do the things they need to do on the field. And not
Yeah.
to say that they're going to do it perfectly every time in every game, but I think that's an important component to, hey, how do you want to be really good? Well, to a certain extent, like I said, the whistle blows. You have to have the confidence in your players that they're going to, like you said, I guess, learn throughout the season so that it becomes very natural to them.
Yeah,
Um,
there's the year before and this year, there's actually been a couple games I've had to miss for family weddings and stuff
mm-hmm.
like that. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, our assistant Andrew has taken the reins and did a great job. Like if maybe you could make the argument potentially that if I was a joystick coach, we'd we'd shit the bed those games
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not there,
Mm-hmm.
telling them exactly what to
What to
do
do?
in
Yeah.
every second. Like, we have a coaching staff that's aligned and a coaching staff where we've
Mm-hmm.
taught the game model to the players um, and kind of built a relationship with them where they should be able to know to some extent what to do and how to play regardless of
Mm-hmm.
who the head coach is or whatnot.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're losing 12 guys. Like, uh,
It's a
like
combination of normal seniors and then I guess fine.
fifth year ish guys. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think five COVID guys as well.
Yeah. What so how does that change sort of your recruiting process or your dynamic for how you're looking now at freshmen, or is it just sort of like we're going to keep doubling down on finding the right guys who play the right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably the latter of what you mentioned. I probably not to say that it's been a problem at all. I think the guys have been great to one another and have really been more so brothers than just teammates. The roster has been 34,
Mm-hmm.
so we probably won't. Um, I think not that it's a problem, but I think bringing down the 34 to around 30 eventually could have some positives coming out of it. So yeah, like if we're bringing in a little bit less guys, then trying to be the goal is to always be
Mm,
a little bit more selective. Again, we're never going to be one of those schools that gets to choose. We always
mm,
have to recruit. Um, but uh, but yeah, it's a big task. You know,
mm,
all 12 guys were either high impact guys or nonetheless important role players. And 2026, 2027, it's about trying, you know, to your point, trying to bring in the guys that are a right fit, but can also emulate a lot of the qualities and probably have an even higher ceiling than the guys that we lose. So
mm. Yeah, that's the other thing I started thinking about is like that transition. You're every year there's guys who are leaving and you're trying to bring in, and so that dynamic is real. I find really really interesting. Like I said, it has nothing to do with being on the field. It has everything to
yeah,
do with
leadership and
leadership, constructing the roster, that sort of thing.
mentorship. Like I think one of the reasons why we've had some success is that the upperclassmen know that a big role of theirs is to be selfless,
Mm-hmm.
and there might be younger guys that get opportunities over them, but um, the sign of a really good upperclassman is to help groom younger guys to be successful, and
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't matter whether you're upperclassman or underclassman. Like everything has to be earned, and if a younger guy earns opportunities over an older guy, then they need to respect that and appreciate that and be the best teammate that they can be. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when you have that type of relationships in the team, it gets passed down. So now the younger guys, when they become upperclassmen, they understand that there's definitely no entitlement. There might be younger guys that are coming through that have a really high ceiling and maybe to some extent outperforming them in training and going to get opportunities. And it is what it is. Like, you know, um, whereas maybe you have a culture where um, you're always bringing in transfers or grad students,
Mm-hmm.
and they're always your first preference to make sure that they're on the field and stuff. That can be demoralizing to younger guys. And,
Mm-hmm.
having upperclassmen that are selfless, I think, is the key word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, has a really positive long term effect.
Mm-hmm. Is there because you made? I mean, you won the national championship. You just made it back. Do you find that people are coming to you or to Connecticut because they're like, this is a high achieving program and they want to be a part of it? I guess the question is, does it become easier from a recruiting perspective to be able to say, hey, we won a national championship, we made the final, blah, blah, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I've gotten this question a couple times. It's hard to decipher a little bit. I mean, there is more interest.
Mm-hmm.
That that's not unique about con any, regardless of any sport, any college team, any college team that's had success is naturally going to get more interest. But like, I think I always go back to the fact of like, what do I look for in a player, technically, tactically, physically, mentally, and just because we're getting more interest doesn't necessarily correlate to um, always having more options that
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
the right fit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
listen, like the other thing too is if you want to come to con only mainly only because we have the potential to compete for a national championship, then like
That's not a
you're
good formula.
you're missing a lot of other factors
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a pro producing environment. I can't, as the coach, I can't guarantee you national championships or anything. Like, again, going back to the right fit, guys that have the academic integrity, guys that have a similar mindset to the guys that are here, guys that want to be part of something bigger than themselves, guys that are football junkies. I think what I try to sell more to recruits than just success, I focus more on our brand of soccer and how we, how we take pride in our game model and looking for guys that like want to be part of a team that genuinely tries to play football and solve problems and create and exploit space. And if we're recruiting kids that like believe in how we play and in the process of how we go about trying to achieve winning and success, like that's more important than recruiting a kid that simply just wants success.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I might have asked you this before, but how much do you dive into the portal at all, or don't you?
um, I mean, we look at it, we consider it. Things have changed so much where you'd be ignorant
Yeah.
not to. Lots of great kids and good players out there. I genuinely, not to say that I'm good at it, because I might not be, but like I genuinely want to be a coach that develops players, that helps them get better. It's tough to do that if you it's tough to do that uh, already in the NESCAC because we don't have a quote unquote off season, and B, going back to the culture aspect, like um, it's part of your development is becoming a more mature mentor and becoming a more selfless guy to the others around you. And it's hard to do that when you only have 1 or 2 years. So, um, yeah, I mean, like we had an amazing transfer this year. I love the kid, Marco Peraguni, who's a younger brother of the senior Christian on our team
Hmm.
this year. Marco is a great fit because known him in the recruiting process and didn't work out for one reason or another, but like he already had an older brother on the team. Um, he wanted to play our brand of soccer. He was a high academic kid. Um, and yeah, I mean, Marco played a huge role for us this year. He transferred from Union College, so another Division III school, maybe
Hmm.
different than how a lot of people look at it, where you know the Division I transfer
Hmm.
is
Yeah, yeah,
more
yeah.
more appealing. But I think Marco ticked a lot of our boxes, and then for any transfer, doesn't matter where they come from, you need to have the right guys around them to help integrate them into the team. And so that's one good example. But I'd say we always consider the transfer portal, but it's never something that I'm going to fully rely on, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, totally switching up because I did want to ask you. Tell me about the national championship game. Like, what were your thoughts going into it? What was the vibe with the game? And obviously, you lost some PKs, but well, you didn't lose technically according to the record, right? You tied, but what?
Well, no, but whoever loses in PKs in the national championship, that's the one game
Oh, it
that
is.
does go down as a loss. Yeah,
Okay. I did not know, but what?
it's a
Yeah, what
nice
was?
little slap in the face. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I walked right into that one. Um, but yeah, what are your thoughts around the game and how you guys played, and I'll just say what your, I guess, tactical approach ended up being, if you don't,
Yeah,
if you can
yeah.
divulge it.
Plenty of people ask me about the national championship, and the first thing I always preface is I don't want it to sound like sour grapes. Amherst fully deserved to win, and I'm sure they would say the same thing about 2021 when we played them. If
Yeah.
um, it's you gotta have a winner one way or another, and
Hmm.
and hats off to Amherst. Um, So not in an attempt to not sound like sour grapes. I thought the field at UNLV was tough. Um, a lot of wood chips, very narrow. Um, the ball was always bouncing. Um, in the Final Four, it was a night game. I feel like make the argument that it was not fully lit based on feedback from the players. But the other tough thing is like you play Thursday, Saturday, so it's a really quick turnaround. Um, both teams are fatigued. Like I say this to recruits, like you know, what gives you better insight is a regular season game in
Mm-hmm.
terms of how we try to play, maybe versus a national championship because you're traveling across the country.
Yeah.
It's a turnaround within 48 hours. There's a lot of pressure, um, and so most of the time, I'm sure coaches would say that you don't quite play your best in the national championship. The other crazy thing, again, I don't want this to sound like sour grapes. Um, they put us in a casino, so
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Oh
so
my gosh.
the environment away from soccer was kind of tough in the sense that we probably had half a dozen players get sick. I know our our All American winger Matt Scaffone played in the Final Four with a 102-degree fever.
Oh my gosh.
Me and our other assistant, we both flew home with pneumonia because you're surrounded by thousands of people
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's a lot of a lot of distractions off the field. But in terms of the game itself, I thought it was dead even. I thought um, it was reflective of any NESCAC game where um,
Yeah.
uh, very little time on the ball, um, not didn't never boiled over, but it was chippy. It was an aggressive game, and I look back and I just wish that I had helped the guys more leading up to the game in terms of you know giving them clearer pictures on maybe how to create chances because I think that's we defended really well.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said for allowing, was it like 17 corners and not conceding. So I thought we defended inside our box really well, which you have to do against Amherst because they put very good balls in and they have the strength and height to attack balls coming in. But for the most part, we dealt with that okay. It's just like when the game maybe became a little bit less fast paced and intense, like we probably could have done a cleaner, quicker job of getting guys into positions to create chances.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're relying on winning in PKs, it probably
Uh-oh.
means that um, you haven't you haven't given yourself the best opportunity to create chances in the run of play. So
Yeah.
yeah, dead even game. Uh, both teams were very good, but probably not quite at their best given the circumstances. And yeah, it was a dilemma for me in PKs because going into the game, I was going back and forth. Do we go with the same PK shooters that had given us success down the road versus Amherst versus
Mm-hmm.
Kenyon, um, while running the risk that they'll have done their homework and know where these guys go, or do I go with all brand new shooters who um, might have a little bit more anxiety and pressure on them, but the scout isn't out on them
Mm-hmm.
of where they're going to go. Ultimately, I felt like if I picked brand new shooters and they weren't comfortable or
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't succeed, then it would
Yeah.
come back on me. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's always the tricky part with the guys you pick for PKs, but and you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like that's the way I look at it. Like you're trading one set of issues, problems for another set that you know maybe the guys aren't, like you said, comfortable, or the reason why they're not in the first, the five you pick, you know. Anyhow,
Yeah.
okay, so this is new. I'm copying this from another podcast that I saw. Um, so this is where you can answer any which way you wish to answer, professional game, youth, college, however you want to answer it. But in soccer, what do you think is the one thing that we're not talking about that we should be?
Um,
Did the seat get hot there? Like you
um,
or
ex-
what's front of mind for you?
player welfare, where the season is way too condensed,
Mm-hmm.
and um, we're we're basically have a schedule where we know players will get injured because they're so overloaded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like no European coach in the professional level would ever want to touch college soccer knowing what our schedule is,
Mm-hmm.
because the players inevitably will eventually get
Break.
injured when you
Yeah.
have a 6-day preseason, 2 games a week, and then within that season, double headers and um, uh, yeah, such minimal time to recover. The biggest frustration with basically the Division 3 kind of model, and I'm sure I'm not just the only one saying this, is when you're in season, it's prepare, play, recover,
Yeah.
prepare, play, recover,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if there was either more time, or the games were spread out better, I think players would have a better experience, because A, they'd be healthy, and B, from a learning development perspective, it wouldn't just be focusing on the next game. You'd have more time to work with them
Mm-hmm.
to actually become a better player.
Yeah. It's a good answer. I always remember back in my day, like you could get through September okay because you're still physically, fit and you haven't like killed yourself by then. But then October rolls around and you start to feel every knock and your legs are heavy and you just never get over that until the season ends, right? And you just try
Yeah.
to hold on. Everybody's wrapped up in 15 different ways trying to hold their body together.
So in the
Um,
in the NESCAC, every team has to play one weekend will be a double header.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I could be wrong. There might be arguments against this, but I always feel like it's more advantageous the earlier you have your double header, so you
Mm-hmm.
can get it out of the
Out
way,
of the way,
to your point,
absolutely. Yeah,
versus being an SCAC team where you have to play your double header later in October.
yeah. You can't.
So
Yeah, yeah. If you did that and you're playing Saturday, Sunday, that's like you might as well just get hit by a Mack truck, and then you're never going to have enough time after that game to really recover before your next game, which the Saturday for
even
you
our
guys would be a
conference
Saturday.
championship is Saturday, Sunday. I
Yeah,
mean, you're
yeah,
playing in arguably the toughest conference in the country,
yeah,
and you have less. You don't have any time to recover. The next game is within 24 hours. How can you possibly play your best when
yeah.
you just played the day before? So
I've always said, and my YouTube influencing only goes so far, and it doesn't influence the NCAA. But I said you should extend the season by 2 weeks. And so instead of doing that first weekend, the national championship in December, let's say, you're doing it the 15th or the whatever that mid December is. That creates, I'm sure, a whole other set of problems. But 2 weeks lets you stretch out your regular season in such a way that at least you
we're
have
not. Yeah,
more periods of time where you could just sort of like, okay, can we just, hey, let's recover, let's work
because
on some things. But
no one's really asking for more games. It's just
Right,
a little
right.
bit more time.
More time to, yeah. That's why, yeah, I'm not saying like, hey, take your 18 games or whatever that number is and get 20 games. No, I just mean extending it out so that, I don't think this impacts you guys as much, but like right, maybe you don't have to do that midweek game or that double header. You're just doing one game. You might have a couple weeks where you have to do a couple games a week, but with all that extra rest time and you can prepare and you can become better. I think it's only a net positive for the game. Forget that it's got, like, I think the quality of the games would get better. I think the quality of the players would get better. You would see a really marked improvement from a player that comes in a freshman to a senior, because you're actually working on things beyond just in the spring. You're actually in season. You're actually doing things to
Yeah.
make them better. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's, but anyhow, Coach, do appreciate it as always.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm a fan of you guys, obviously, and do appreciate you taking the time, and wish all you guys the best in the spring and keep rocking it. So thank
Yeah.
you.
And likewise, appreciate the time, and just as importantly, everything that you're doing for the D3 coaches and athletes and the exposure.
Thank you.
You're one of the first to do it, and I think a lot of people appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you kindly. We'll see each other soon.
Awesome.